Welcome to AUC People, and today I'm delighted that we're joined by Henry and Melany Plessis, and they have been part of our church community here at AUC for quite a few years now, and recently became members, and we're going to have the opportunity this morning to get to know them a little bit better. So welcome, Henry and Melany.
Right, so tell us a little bit about how it all started and the early years. Maybe kick off with you, Melany.
Okay. My parents came from two small towns outside of Cape Town, Oudtshoorn and Worcester, and they raised the family in Cape Town. I am middle child, got an older sister and a younger brother. So started school in Cape Town. Both my parents were teachers, and so I grew up with my mom and dad always having homework. There was always books around, books that needed to be covered, books that needed to be marked, and I always said, I don't want to become a teacher. It's just too much work. They work the whole time. Do not want to become a teacher. I didn't know what I wanted to be, but I didn't want to be a teacher. So went through primary school, high school, and then 1985 was some school boycotting, and at that stage I was in standard 8, grade 10. So my parents took me out of school. They wanted me not to be part of that. We were brought up very, very protected. And so I went to a college, actually up the road here. It was called Cape Tutorial College, and it was just up Eden Road. And that's where I then finished standard 9 and 10. Very protected childhood, oblivious of what was going on around me. And to an extent, I think it was because we were two girls. My brother came much later. And I think my dad just kept us, like in a nest. And it was only after matric, really, I went to UCT. And it was only there that I really became aware of racism, cultures, and differences between people. So I started varsity, and I decided to do a BSc degree. I did BSc, it took me 4 years, and after that I thought, what now? I still wasn't qualified for anything. You've got this degree, but you don't have a job yet. And then I took another 2 years and I studied an honours in dietetics to become a dietitian. And when I was done with that, I actually was offered a job at a school, which jobs were scarce, so I took the job. I taught nutrition after I said I was never going to become a teacher. I taught nutrition at a college, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. So much so that a year later I enrolled for a diploma in education. And I was there for another 15 years.
Wow.
At the same college, teaching different things though. I started with nutrition, but as the department changed syllabi, I kind of also had to change and taught other things. So I ended up teaching for about 10 years business studies, entrepreneurship and things like that. And I really liked teaching. Up until a certain point. And I think...
Even though you're definitely not going to be...
Definitely not going to go to teaching. Too much work. I really loved it. And I think just when the kids came and they had their school and their sport and stuff, it became difficult because Henry was working long hours.
Okay, well, I'm going to stop you there. I think we'll come back to all of that. So, Henry, tell us a little bit about your early years.
Yeah, my parents are both also small Dorpy parents. They come from Oudtshoorn, both of them. And they decided to come to Cape Town very early stage. I think they were something like 21 and 19. And they came here, and long story short, they fell in love. Well, fell in love, they didn't Oudtshoorn. One came before the other to Cape Town. A few years later, quite a few years later, we had six children. I'm the youngest of six.
The baby.
I'm the baby, yeah. Spoiled, not spoiled brat. My dad then used to stay in Newlands, and unfortunately to the Comparative Areas Act, he had to move out of Newlands then only with my sister and brother, eldest sister and brother. The others weren't born yet, they had to move out, and then he had to go and stay at an aunt of his in Athlone, a place called Bokmakiri, which is just around Athlone. I'm not sure if you know where Hazeldean is, in Bokmakiri. He stayed there for just over a year or so, and then he bought his house in Athlone, where he stayed all his life, they stayed all their lives. My mother died when I was 7. She had kidney problems, kidney failure, so unfortunately she died when I was very young. But I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers, and a very big father in stature as well in size. No nonsense person, but very fair, and so I had the protection of the wider family, being the youngest. Even my dad never married again. He stayed single. In later years, he had a companion, which was good because we felt, he's really given his life to all his kids, educated us all, and married at that time 3 of the children already. And so when he retired, he met a young lady, well, not a young lady, lady of his age, we were happy for him. Where I come from, in Athlone, I grew up all my life in Athlone, in Cape Town. He went to a primary school called Sunnyside Primary, and then to Alexander Sinton High School, a very activist high school. Unlike Mel, I grew up in an activist community, and because of that, we were exposed more to these atrocities than many people have been. We've even formed networks in the school with legal firms. We were taught what to say, what not to say, or how to act when the cops do come to school. And this all stood us in good stead when it did happen, because they did come. We were arrested many times. We were taken to Secret Service headquarters in Cape Town, in Cullinan Square. We were familiar with the type of tactics they used, so we were well prepared for this, because that's on the SRC. So we were targeted more than any other people as such. So from that perspective, we were quite prepared, but still a very traumatic occurrence. So from that particular point of view, in my schooling, that's one part, which is the activist part. The other part is the academic part, and my favorite part is the sport part, which our school very sporting oriented also. We had what we call athletics meetings called chapter champs, A sections, which was a regional type of meetings with a number of other schools in the areas, from Cape Town Central all the way to Belleville, and we'd compete at different levels, and we'd always come first out on tops as such. There's another school down the road called Belgravia High School, and they were my main competitor, and so some years they would win, some years we win as such. But such was the quality of the athletics that many of the South African representatives at school level came from those 2 schools as such.
So you were an athlete yourself?
Yes, I was an athlete. I took part in 800 and in the 400 meters. Also at club level, I participated for Spartans as such. And I enjoyed my athletics. I love running. I took part in volleyball, badminton, squash, did some swimming, played only for office season rugby. I said, no, it's too rough for me. I love my running, I can't afford this kind of injuries. So that's where I stopped with rugby. Then after matric, in fact, we broke out of the matric exams in '85 because of the unrest that's happening. In fact, I think it was that year we joined the Purple Rain initiative, where we had, together with political activists as well as ministers, priests rather, that were not ministers as in political ministers, but priests, including Alan Buzak, who then walked down Corbin Road, which was just down the school, and we were told to sit down. We sat down. Of course, the security police and the police then came with their cannons and purple and sprayed with a water cannon, which had purple down. That was to identify who the protesters were later when they do patrol and they pick up and then question you as such, why we at the protest as such. So we decided not to write exams. In fact, it was basically just our class. There were 4 matriculant classes. When the other 2 classes, so they were not going to write, they also decided to write the exam. Of course, the principal was livid. The parent was even more livid with that, but they understood the reasons why we're doing this. This is our silent protest as such. And so we then repeated the year later, did the exam the following year. Then I went to university. I started out at Plessis University. My first so-called interaction with other races.
So just to stop you there, Henry, that's quite a big thing.
Yeah.
Lifelong Athlonian.
Yeah.
Off to Joburg to study.
Yeah. I was exposed to many different cultures and races then, which was eye-opener. But I'm that kind of guy. I like to see what's happening outside of the world, so to speak. So I'm open to learning as such.
So what did you study at Plessis?
I studied human movement studies at RUC. So I was exposed to a number of different cultures there and way of life. And completed my studies, then came back to Cape Town. And then I caught someone, but that's another story to tell. As such.
So just back to the human movement. So at school, did you have a sense of what you wanted to do? You involved in turbulent times. I'm fascinated that you say you're an activist even at school.
Yeah.
As a child.
Yes.
That's quite hectic for a young person to have to take on.
Yeah.
Was that shaping what you thought you wanted to do with your life? What was behind the choice of what you decided to study, and was that a really big thing for you to decide to go to Joburg and study events as opposed to somewhere in Cape Town, closer to home?
I think the reason why there was one field which I wanted to do, which I didn't know I had the ability to do it as such, and so I decided to do human movements first as a kind of base course. As such, because that's what was available in terms of bursaries, in terms of the market. You have to get into a school or into a club to do that. I didn't want to do law. I didn't want to do accounting. I didn't want to do those things. The one thing which I wanted to do later on, which I thought, okay, it'll take me a few years to get there, but I'll do it, is something in transportation. I love how people move around, how they construct roads, bridges, the highways, freeways. That interested me because it's a connectivity, connects communities, connects people and culture. So that interested me down the line, not now. Lo and behold, I didn't know it was going to be far quicker than I thought as such. So when I came back to Cape Town, I taught for 2 years in temporary posts, and I said, no, that's it. I'm not going to teach.
You've been listening to Mel.
And then a good friend of mine says, Adrian, why don't you apply for, you always want to be in transportation, there's a post in the city. Apply for that, which I did. It was the longest half an hour interview, I think it was. I probably sat still, even muscle me cringing. because when I went and I left the interview, my entire back was wet and my armpits were wet. But 2 weeks later, I got the affirmation that I got the post as such. And then I started working for the city in '95.
Okay. So back to the coming together of you two. You said something caught your eye. I'd like to hear it from your side first.
Okay.
I was going to hear this also.
Okay, so we actually both come from Glenmore Congregational Church. I don't think we really knew each other until youth. They had.
So you're going to the same church as children?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
But you didn't know each other?
No.
Is it because it was so big?
It was fairly big. And because Henry's a few years older, we weren't really in Sunday school together.
Right.
So we had a vibrant youth, and that's kind of where we met. Actually, at the time, the minister at Glenmore Congregational was Steve DeCruci.
Oh, wow.
From the Bush United.
Yes.
And so we had a good youth setup, very active. There were lots of plays and stuff like that, and that's where Henry and I met.
I was a bit active.
You were in a drama together?
We were actually. There was a drama that Steve wrote with Des van der Water. It was called What Would Jesus Do? And we then took it to the region. We went to various churches, with the team, the drama team. And afterwards, they said, no, but we should really film this. It was like, what? Movie, snippet. And we filmed it in this church. So I think that was
full circle.
Yes, that was our introduction to RUC. But then, of course, we were still at Glenmore. We got married. We were still quite active in the church, Sunday school.
We missed a few steps there.
Oh, okay.
One thing to be in the same place, another thing to get
Okay, so from youth and a few camps, and then we started going out. This was probably when I was 19, 20 maybe, and we went out for 4 years, and then we got engaged and got married in '95.
Yeah.
This is something you want to add to that?
A lot. How long? I think Mal covered more or less that. Yes, we were the same youth. When I got back, we belong to a Christian organization, the CCC, Capital Crusade for Christ.
Okay.
They're kind of a university-based organization for Christians. Mel belonged to the UCD campus, I belong to the WC campus, and that's where we got to know each other on that level also. Besides just at church. She also as voices as now, she was a little quiet, conservative, lady, I love that. Unfortunately, when she married me, she changed colors, she shook on my eye at the youth. And then we went on a number of conferences. There's one also at Stony Reach, I think, out in Joburg. Also a university conference, which we got to know each other a bit better. And they said, this is history. We started dating for about 4 years. She kept on singing for 4 years. She refused to answer my question. After 4 years, only she gave me the yes answer.
So you'd asked the question quite early on, didn't you?
I thought, but just being there is answer the question, but no.
Ask the question.
Then I was the traditional kind of person, so I had to ask the parents. I had to sit them down and ask what's happening. But they knew me quite well by that time. And I had no real issues with my in-laws, so they're fantastic people. Then I popped the question at one of the hotels here in Cape Town. And I asked him about close friends to be with, and in case she says no to me, and I have to be consoled. No, I usually say yes. And then, what was it? 8, 9 months later, I think we got married. Yeah, so that was our earlier part.
Sure. So, I gather then careers started to develop, and maybe there was children came along. So maybe talk us through that a little bit. I mean, Mel, you've talked about how you were a dietitian for a while, and then you taught. I mean, I assume, Henry, that meant you got to eat very healthy food.
You can see.
When did the kids come along, and what was happening sort of career-wise for you both?
So I studied dietetics, but I never practiced full-time as a dietitian because I got the job as a teacher straight after varsity. And so then I was in the education field and kind of lost track of the the dietetic side. And so we were married about 3 years when the first baby was on the way. So Michaela was born. And 3 years later, Caleb was born. We just got the 2. And I've always wanted to be there when they grow up, to be present, not to miss out on anything. And because I was at a technical college, our school timetables never really overlapped. I would be off and they would be at creche or school, and vice versa. And those times I had to find a sitter. We did leave them with my mom, but they were also getting older, so we didn't want to do that permanently. And the idea was always that eventually I would stay at home, and that was what I wanted to do. We couldn't initially afford it, so I think the kids were primary school when I finally decided this is it. I'm going to stop teaching. The teaching field at that stage changed a lot as well. So it did become easier for me to leave teaching. They had changed from, I don't know if you know, levels. And it was a much younger student that came to college with a lot of issues and problems and stuff. And so for me, that was a good time to leave. I was glad I did. But it gave me a chance to be quite involved with the kids and their schooling. I was one of the moms that was always asked to come help covering the books and to invigilate, and so that was good. And both Michaela and Caleb were involved with sport and hockey especially. And it was always nice to be the mom to offer lifts, to be there to take the photos. And so I never regretted going back. I did think that once they finished with matric, I might go back and do something, but that hasn't happened yet. I also do enjoy a lot of crafts, so I'm quite into paper crafts, scrapbooking, making cards and things like that. So that's what's keeping me busy now that the kids are almost done studying.
Lovely. And you set up home in Athlone, I assume, after you got married?
Not in Athlone. We got married. We stayed, was it a year and a half? In a flat in Para. In a flat, a small suburb outside of Bell, between Pilots and Yom. I think we stayed there for a year, isn't it? Or something like that. I think it was good because we need to get to know each other also. So I didn't want to stay, even though there were places to stay at our parents' place. I didn't want to stay there. I didn't want to be independent. So we stayed in Para for about a year, and then we bought a house in Thornton. And we stayed there for, what was it, 3 years?
Both kids were born in Thornton.
In Thornton, yeah. So, and then there were many break-ins in our house in Thornton, and In fact, my late dad said to me, Henry, you got to get out of here before something happens. Because in 1 year, we had more than 13 break-ins. They only got past the burglar bars, and they ran away because we had armed response. So every time I had to repair the window, repair the burglar bars. Unfortunately, they wanted home and it happened. But what happens either or I don't. And so we took the decision that we're going to sell. We didn't have a house to go to, but we were going to sell. Then we found a flat in Islands, a very nice flat in Islands, and we stayed there for another 3 years,
Yes.
3 years. And we bought a house where we stay currently now in Islands, and we stayed there now for 15, 16 years now in Islands.
Okay.
But in terms of my own career, I started in the city of Cape Town as a professional planner in the transport division. I was very fortunate to have good mentors. David Daniels, who was then the city planner, and he's supported Shahid Solomons. And they gave me a lot of scope to grow in the city. But also I was willing to tackle on the hard issues also. I always found that to be a challenge. It can't be right or wrong, it's no middle ground. So that helped me to grow very quickly in the city. And within 4 years, when the chief transport engineer left, a very good guy was Peter Clark. He eventually became the regional head for transportation in New Zealand. I applied for his position in the city and got the position. I was surprised I got the position, but Peter Desmay, I headed up then the transport planning division for the city of Cape Town, the old city of Cape Town, for about 5 years. And during that period, there was transition between all 7 municipalities, local municipalities, into one mega municipality known as the city of Cape Town. Before that could happen, there was some disciplinary processes that happened with one of the heads of the department for public transport, and they asked me to act in that position. So with my current position, I had to also take over all the public transport functions for the entire megacity now, not only for Cape Town as such. Which of course exposed me to the taxis, to the bus, to the rail, the things behind the scenes. I think that's where I also harnessed my negotiation skills and learned what people really need and what they need to know. In fact, I shocked a colleague of mine, Mark Sampson. He was the traffic chief at the time. I had these taxi wars played out in Cape Town, and I wanted to intervene. And so I called Carter and Godieta together, and I called the Provincial Taxi Association together also, which is the 3 main bodies in Cape Town, taxi associations. I called their chairpersons, and I said to them simply, I need this to stop. But can you please arrange a meeting with the role players that's behind you? I don't want to meet with you. Of course, they took a front to me, why do you want to meet them? Long story short, they came back and they were willing to meet, but on their terms. And they weren't going to meet with other groups, they want to meet individually. I said, no, we'll all meet in my conference room. And you can bring whatever you need to bring, but you leave it out outside the conference room, and he'll get back to you with no questions asked. I'd already spoken to Mark Sanks about this, and he agreed. So they came, and you'd be surprised what kind of ammunition they were carrying. And so we had these long rifle cupboards, and they put their stuff in there, had the meeting, and took stuff out and went. What happens once they leave the building is about problem. And we had very successful negotiations, and the reason why I did that was the issue of trust. So I needed them to know that my yes is a yes, my no is no. So when I said to them, this can't happen, it's not going to happen. When I said it's going to happen, they know it's going to happen. And that's what I built up the trust within the taxi and the bus community for a number of years. Until I left, of course, then the megacity was formed and new positions came available. So I was in transport, I was in public transport. I said, no, I need to find a new adventure now. And then I said, I think I'll apply for the head of roads for the entire megacity. And I only applied that position. I didn't apply any. There were planning positions, there were public transport, there were town planning. I only applied for the one position. And I got interviewed by the mayor, by the city manager. It went well. And they asked me an interview. Any questions? I said, only one question. They said, Henry, but we can't discuss salary. I said, no, doctor. I'll discuss that with you if I get appointed. That's what I want to ask. He said, no, what do you want to ask? I said, it might sound that I'm shooting myself in the leg, but it's very important for me to say this. So I said that should you appoint me, I will only accept the position if you allow me to appoint my deputies without interference. And the reason why I say so is you're expecting me to deliver on your mandates, but I need to know the people behind me are able to do so. So there should be no interference on who I need to appoint, because at the time it was a clean slate. There was no one, I had to appoint my own deputies, or deputies that had to be appointed. And they agreed, and then today they have interfered in my appointments as such. And the track record speaks for itself, not only locally but nationally also. People speak volumes about the quality of roads in Cape Town. Because I have the people, I have to appoint the people I thought to have these skills and abilities and experience to deliver on the mandate as such. And that's where I was for 15 years. Through that, we also did the World Cup in Cape Town. We had to put in a new transport system, which I was part of developing. Developed also a new transport system where we had 3 operators, private operators running with it, the My City operators. We have a number of interesting developments in Cape Town which I'm responsible for. And then last year we were now 2021, last year, on the onset of the pandemic, we are in the city at the moment. And after being in the city for 26 years, I said I need new adventures. And then I decided I'll take early retirement, I'll just end my benefits and to get opportunities outside of the city of Cape Town that would be of interest to me and would challenge me going forward. But first, I'm taking a few months break to work on the nerves of my wife just to recharge the batteries as such. That's where I am at the moment.
Great. So, enjoying some well-earned break. I mean, I'm sure being in such a senior position for a long time, it came with lots of stresses and strains. So, recharging the batteries.
Yeah.
So, I mean, together, do you have a sense of what the future looks like? What's next?
I didn't expect retirement to come so quickly. But for now we're enjoying it. We do a lot of running. Practically every day we get up, we run with a few friends, all masked up, but we run. Just for fun. There are no races or anything, so we're really just trying to keep fit. And then when we're done running, we would say, okay, shall we go have some coffee somewhere? And often we just go and have some coffee, or we walk on the beach. So that's been good. If that is what retirement is like, then, then I'm happy. But Henry's open to taking on something else still if it should arise, I think.
But not sure what it is yet.
I'm not sure what it is.
Yeah, I mean, before I get to that, Mal's been very modest. When we started going out, Mal, I regard Mal as a bookworm. What's the English word for bookworm? Someone who loves books. She loves reading. So I would go and run a race and she would take a book out and read, or a magazine or something. And then when she started to walk and started doing the races, I was quite surprised. To the point whereby now she completed 10K races, 21K races, or marathon races, and marathon races. She's got a sub 5 hour for marathon, which is very good. She has a number of races that's difficult races. There's the 21-kilometer race in Wellington, the Safari Challenge, which she notched up the first 10 medals. Every year she gets a medal, so she has 10 under her belt. She was going to do the 2 Oceans in 2019 the 10th time. So she has come a long way from a bookworm to running. And so I'm very appreciative that I've never in my wildest dream for children, to be honest with you. And I accepted that, because she has interest, I have interest. So, but now we have the same interest in terms of running. We enjoy it. We go on the mountains. We run on the mountains. This year, for the first time, we were introduced to trail running on farms. So on a weekend, we'd go to where the race is happening, outside in Paul, in Wellington, or in Portrafid, or wherever it is, and we'd go down there, make a day of it. And I think for me, it kind of also brings us closer as a couple, doing things together, which I think is very important. Especially this time of your life where you've seen the kids grow up. Okay, our kids are still at home, but then one day they're going to move out. And so we need that things that you do together as a couple, which is very important going forward as such. So that's where we are.
So it's been great to have you as part of the RUC community for a few years now. I know you've mentioned already you came from a very rich church tradition previously. So tell us how you came to be part of RUC and what was involved in making that change. Let me start with you.
Okay. So our kids grew up and things changed at the previous church. The youth in Sunday school wasn't as vibrant. It was also difficult times, I suppose. And because we had such a good youth, we kind of wanted that for our kids as well, which they weren't getting. And there were a number of other issues which eventually made us leave. And of course, we didn't want to make an immediate decision about where to go, but we wanted the kids to be involved in a youth group. And so Ellen and Don Shay stays 2 doors away from us, and we always knew that they belonged to RUC. And then I think it was one Christmas we just decided, no, we haven't been to our church in a while, let's go to RUC. And we felt so at home here. We were welcomed like family. Of course, Melany made sure we were introduced to a lot of people. We loved it here. We felt very comfortable. We loved the teaching that Robert does. And then the kids were confirmed here. And so all along we're still just visiting. Our kids belong to RUC, but we're just visiting.
Were you still going to your other church?
No, we were not. So we were coming here every week. We just didn't make the decision yet. And I think, I'm not sure how long it was, but last year we became members of the church. And something Robert said was true. He said it wasn't that it was difficult for us to join here, but it was difficult to leave the previous church. But we eventually made the decision, and we became members here. And I've always thought that we would play a fairly active role, but then COVID happened. So we're kind of on hold here a little bit. But yeah, so looking forward to in the next year or two, when we pass this COVID, to become more involved, more in the social activities maybe, and the soup kitchens, that side of things. Yeah.
Great. Okay. And from your side, Henry?
Yeah, pretty what Mel said. I think we were exposed to this church at an early stage. So it was something new to us coming to RUC. For me, it's different. It wasn't a traditional church where we come from. In fact, our youth was so vibrant at our old church. It persuaded the church council and the minister to have a band for the youth as part of the service. Of course, there was some resistance, but long and short, we had the band and we had the choir in the same service. So the youth would start with the service, and the choir would be during the service singing the choir, singing their hymns as such. So that's what really attracted me to this church, is that there's this opportunity to do a similar forward as such. There isn't a choir here, but there's room for that to happen. The youth is very active here, but if you expose the youth to those kind of opportunities, I think that will make and put the church on a different level again. The teachings, it's excellent. I love the way Robert able to translate his main sermon to that of the church, of the kids' sermon before the main sermon starts in the morning as such. And that's important, that the children feel part of the church, and not go on and go to Sunday school. I think that's very important. It used to happen like that in our church, and I think that was changed. I think also when Steve came around our church, he actually had a session with children before his main sermon. He actually called the kids out, which wasn't something that we used to do. So those are the kind of traditions which we grew up with, and I see that again at RUC, and I see there's lots of potential going forward for things to change. And to be more inclusive going forward as such. But I think for me, it's the ministry, the opportunity to be engaged, and a different way of doing that. You have the normal traditional ministers. Robert isn't a traditional minister. Robert is I don't know what to call Robert, but Robert, it tests, without realizing it, it tests your thinking, it makes you ponder on, that's an interesting perspective. I haven't thought of that perspective yet. And it makes you want to go and read your Bible and just do some kind of a introspection of the sermon as such, which to me is very good. And so that's what really attracts me going forward in this church, and why we decided to come to this church and have our kids become members of this church. For the reasons that Mel has indicated going forward. It took us long to become members, not because we don't want to be members of RUC. There were some issues which I've indicated my personal capacity to assist my own church to deal with before making any decisions to leave. But those issues took too long time to resolve, and I wasn't going to get the kind of growth I need in my faith at my old church because of the issues happening there. That's when we decided to be more active involved at RUC, and then make the decision to resign from our previous church and then join RUC. And that's where we are since November last year, I think it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, great to have you here. And Henry, you just joined the church council, so as a member of that, it's been great to have your input. It's been wonderful to get to know you both better this morning, and thank you for your time. And I'm sure the other listeners have also appreciated your honesty and openness with us. So thank you so much, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. Thank you.